Hi students, we're going to be talking about the Incas today. We did the Aztecs and the Maya, so we got to finish with the Incas. All the videos are already posted up on the stream for your class, so if you want to watch the videos, go ahead. The one that's really long is just music. You do not need to watch the whole thing. If you just get a gist for how the music goes, you're good. Okay, so talking about the Inca. So first we're going to talk about their government. So first of all, they were a monarchy, so they had a king or an emperor. Their emperor they called Sapa Inca. They had layers to their government. So they had the emperor, the viceroy, which is kind of like a vice president, the high priest, who was the head of religion, governors, a council of realms, which was kind of like city council, inspectors, generals, and officials. The empire was divided into 4 parts. Each part was called a suyu. Taxes, they didn't collect money, but they collected taxes in the form of crops and labor. So they would take a portion of food and they would ask you to work on some kind of government project to pay your taxes. They had laws against murder, stealing, and cheating on your taxes. They actually had really harsh punishments. A lot of the punishments they handed out were executions or death penalties. Religion, the Inca believed that there were 3 realms, or 3 different separate areas. There was the sky, the inner earth, so the part like the core almost where you couldn't get to it, and then the outer earth where they lived. They believed that Inti was the sun god, and this is usually how they represented it, which was a picture of the sun with a person's face on it. Mama Kia was the goddess of the moon, marriage, and the defender of women, so they kind of had their own goddess for women. Pachamama was the goddess of the earth, and so she protected farming. Supa was the god of death, and he ruled the underworld. So this was an interesting fact that I found. Tribes that the Inca conquered worshipped their own gods as long as the tribes agreed to worship the Inca gods as supreme. So if you had your own set of gods and you were captured or brought into the Inca Empire, they said, yeah, you can worship your own gods as long as you say our gods are the best. And then you can do whatever you want. So they were a little more relaxed religion-wise than some of the Maya or the Aztecs. Okay. Religion. So they had temples, and they're beautiful. One of the more famous one is Machu Picchu, and I have in one of the videos they take a tour and they show you it. It's really beautiful. I really recommend you look at it. The Inca held religious festivals every month. Sometimes human sacrifice would be included. It's noted that the Inca did human sacrifice a lot less than groups like the Aztecs. The Aztecs were doing that like every day. The Inca, every month. So a little less. There was something called Cancha, which was a golden temple. So the walls were made of gold. The floors were made of gold. It was a completely golden temple. If you've ever seen the movie The Road to El Dorado, they're looking for like the golden city. That would be similar to this golden temple. There are no like pictures or anything of that, but we do have records of some explorers saying that this thing did actually exist. What's interesting about the Inca is for their afterlife, they actually did mummification. So a lot of times when we think of mummies, we think of Egypt, but they actually had their own way of making mummies. And we'll get into that, and I have a little something to go with that for Friday. So. Huacas were their sacred objects or places, and they believed that spirits inhabited these places. A lot of time, these huacas were like temples, mountains, places that they saw sacred, and the higher up you were, the more sacred the place was. So mountains were considered extremely sacred and important. So heaven was divided up into 4 parts. If you lived a good life, you lived closer to the sun. Once again, that idea of the higher up you were, the closer you were to the gods. You had all the food you could drink. All the food and drinks you could want. If you had lived a bad life where you were doing bad deeds, you were sent to the underworld, which was below the earth, where it was cold and dark and you only had rocks to eat. So they had a kind of above the earth, below the earth for their afterlife. Society, obviously at the very top of everything is the emperor. Below him were nobles. These were considered true Incan descendants. What that meant is they believed that their ancestors, so their grandparents or great-grandparents, helped build the capital city, which is called Cusco. These nobles could own land and they didn't have to pay taxes because they helped establish this capital city. Public administrators were the people who ran the government day to day. Commoners, those were your farmers and artisans. They had to work hard, they didn't own land, and they basically spent all day either farming or doing whatever craft or service they did. Ailu were lots of families together. This is similar to the Aztecs. They had their own little group. The Incas also had families that were together that handled land and paid taxes as a group. Houses, they were these adobe bricks, so think more like brick houses. Food, they had squash, corn, beans, tomatoes, peppers, fish, and duck. So a little mixture of protein and plant. So only the wealthy children went to school. And the kids, they were left mostly to themselves until they became adults. So for some of you, might have been a more ideal place. Technology. They actually had paved roads. So if you see this picture here, this is what remains of one of their roads. So there were these stone roads that were pretty smooth, and they would actually have people who ran down the roads, and that's how they passed messages. Was they had these specific roads that the messengers would go city to city and bring news. So you could have a job as basically a runner in their ancient society. That was actually pretty important. They also had bridges, so they would go over waterways with these. Commoners didn't travel the roads, so the roads were not for normal people to go back and forth. They were for the messengers to get important messages from city to city. They also had quipus, and that's this picture right here. So instead of having like picture writing or writing like we have with letters, they did all of their writing and recording of information. Sorry, I lost my mouse. With these ropes. So every like little knot meant something, and how far apart they were and how many knots there were communicated some kind of information. We actually don't know what it means because no one actually can read these anymore. So we don't actually know what they mean, we just know that those were the writing. For farming, they had their own irrigation systems. They also had calendars, which they divided into 12 months like we do now. And obviously they collected taxes, like I said, not in the form of money, but in the form of land and work. You would have to do a certain amount of work for the government. All right, so that's all about the Incas. I'm going to have questions. Make sure you answer them. Actually answer them and submit them. And on Friday, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to give you a heads up now that we are going to be watching a video. And it's a longer video. You don't have to watch it all. But I'll be giving more instructions on that come Friday. All right, hope everyone's doing okay. Bye, guys. Hope everyone's good. Hope everything stays good.